Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1. Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Carlos Valencia from the acknowledged I had this down earlier. Yes. Bautista Victoria and Cristo in Fort Worth. Please come forward. I apologize for my continued mispronunciation.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Esta es Iglesia Bautista Victoria en Cristo.
That's it.
You got it.
Yeah, we knew it.
Okay, let me lead us in prayers. Heavenly Father, I want to say thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you, God, because we have the opportunity to go to your presence and asking you, God, for wisdom, guidance for this beautiful meeting. Please help these beautiful people to take the best decision for the city of Fort Worth in this future. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Pastor, for coming out today.
Thank you, Pastor.
We got Dan with us today. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we do not have any announcements as it relates to the agenda today. I just simply wanted to remind you that next Tuesday is going to be our Thanksgiving luncheon, and we will have that right after court is over with.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of November the 8th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion, Commissioner Fickus. Motion passes unanimously. We have one proclamation today. It is the proclamation regarding the Tarrant County Adoption Day, and I believe Mr. Robley Cigar, not Mr. and Mrs. Robley Cigar, is here to accept that, and I'll read it into the record. Whereas there are thousands of Texas children living in foster care, hoping for a loving home to join, and approximately 1,200 of these children are in Tarrant County. And whereas these children would benefit from a loving, stable, nurturing, and safe home, and whereas adoption allows children to grow in a safe, loving, and nurturing environment, as adoptive parents take on the role of guiding, teaching, nurturing, and loving children to support them in becoming productive citizens. And whereas we recommend these families for the love and commitment they have to enhance the lives of these children, and whereas the children being adopted by these loving and special families will have a new opportunity in life to fulfill their hopes and dreams, and whereas this is a special day to celebrate, and we send our best wishes to the children whose adoptions are made final today, and to the wonderful families who will give them unconditional love, now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim November 18th, 2016, as Tarrant County Adoption Day. In witness whereof we have herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 15th day of November 2016, and I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. I'm bringing it to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, and we'd like to invite all of you to attend on Friday. If you are more than welcome to come and see the festivities. It's a very positive day in the Family Court building. This year, we have 44 families that are adopting 75 children. We have 4 families that are adopting 4 or more siblings, and we have 1 family that is adopting a sibling group of 6 children. So, yes, we are very excited, and thank you so much. This means a lot to us.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank
the
you very
support.
much. Thank you for the work. I know this is an effort that is, it's a very special day over in our family courts building. There's a lot of our different groups that work on that within the county family. And so this is one of the days when there's a lot of happiness going on over there, unlike many of the days when unfortunately it's not as nice of an environment to be in. So we certainly want to thank everybody in the county who helps participate in that. With that, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning and thank you. We have 2 additional items for the court. The second item, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for the purchasing department. Mr. Beecham is requesting a waiver of 368 vacation hours retroactive to November 5th. This is connected to a senior buyer who retired at the end of October. If approved, the net cost of this request will be approximately $4,300 to the general fund.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3, again, is another waiver, this time from Probate Court 1. Judge King is requesting a waiver of 55 vacation hours effective November the 21st. His guardianship assistant retired at the end of October, and so that's the reason for this request. If approved, the net savings to the general fund will be approximately $9,900, including fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
He has nothing.
I know he doesn't. Last week he wanted to be sure that I read the scores from a game this week, and I just thought I would want to oblige him. I would tell you that your best score was before the game started, and that's when it was 0-0. At the end of the first quarter, it was LSU 7 and Arkansas 0. At the end of second, the Tigers were up 21-7. At the end of the third, it was 28-10. And at the end of the game, it was, I believe, 38-10. So I just wanted to let you know I do what you asked me to do, and I read the scores.
What was the score of the second quarter?
The end of the second quarter, it was 21-7.
That's the moment I ran out of Jack Daniels. I just view this as a speed bump in the game of life, and I have decided that every time Robert Early is on the agenda, I'm going to have a bad day. Thank you.
Well, then if I were you, I'd go ahead and find you someplace to hide for the rest of the day. Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner Fickus both have things.
Have these interlocals for Commissioner Brooks been approved by the DA's office? Yes. I move approval of item 8K1, A, B, C, and D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus.
Yeah, I'd like to move approval of the interlocal with the city of Grapevine.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve items 8K, 2A, and B. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today?
I have 2.
Okay.
Appointing myself to TIF, this is Fort Worth TIF, number 7, North Tarrant Parkway, and number 10, Lone Star Cabela's TIF.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We've got before you the approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Move for approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manings.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have two items to bring to you this morning. The first is the monthly update for the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all?
Good morning.
Congratulations, you won an award.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
What award was it?
There was an award that the PRSA, the Public Relations Society of America, gave me for being a decent communicator.
He's the Communicator of the Year for the national group. Is that-
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you.
So we get to hear from the Communicator of the Year.
Yeah, get ready for this. Communicator of the Year award here. I wish they'd give me an award for like having semi-motor skills. Then you don't disappoint when you get up to speak. So it appears that Jack ran out of Jack Daniels about the same time his team did. So it seems to be a universal thing. I'm sorry I've not made your day.
Pickle them hogs is what they.
I do want to thank you all. We've had a variety of community functions of late that have gone exceptionally well. I had the opportunity to be with Commissioner Fickus out in Colleyville for their Chamber of Commerce, and it's an honor that more and more people are asking JPS to come before their community functions to speak and tell people about JPS. I want to thank you all. I know that it was tough on some of y'all's schedules to get to our event, but we had an event 2 weeks ago where we presented to the community what the new and improved JPS is like. I think there are some people who you all know that in your lives that remember you when you were in college or remember you when you were 22 years old, and sometimes they can't get you out of that. JPS has changed a lot in the last 8 years, and there's some people that still see JPS as where it was 30 years ago, and it's not that JPS. So we had an event 2 weeks ago, Tuesday morning, to really present to the community some of the things that were happening at JPS. And what was really interesting was there was a part in that presentation where we asked everybody, there were 500 people in the audience from all representatives of the community, and we asked everybody who had received health care at JPS to stand. And what was interesting is 2/3 of the room stood up and had received some form of health care or had a family member receive health care at JPS. And I think that was eye-opening to people because that's not the stereotype of JPS. And I was thankful that those who were there were there. We got donations from the community because if you heard in my comments, JPS cannot survive just on tax dollars. 40% of our local tax dollars support JPS's budget, and we're appreciative of that. But the fact that we get dollars philanthropically and from community makes a big difference for us. And what we had was 80% of the people that attended the event were new donors to JPS, and that was very helpful to us. And that was a very positive event. A couple comments I wanted to make to y'all, and I know that Commissioner Wynn has a good deal of interest in this, but we go through a yearly long process of establishing goals and putting those goals into place. And we go through every individual at JPS establishing goals for themselves, goals for their department, goals for their division, and goals for the network. And we're now in our final weeks of approving all those goals. And they'll be the goals that we work towards, that we monitor, that we report out to you as commissioners and to the community on how we're hitting those goals, whether we miss them, whether we hit them, or whether we advance them. So we're now to the final week of this year's goals, and we'll set those out and we'll get those moving. And I'll also communicate those to you, those of you who have your members come to our board meetings. We articulate them, but I'll be giving those to you as well so that you can see what those goals are and be able to mark how JPS is doing and whether we're reaching those goals.
Would it be possible if you include in those goals some measurements regarding JPS's penetration rate into indigent care?
Yes.
See how we're doing on a high level?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll be happy to do that. I'm happy to share it not only with your office, but with all the offices. Thank you very much for that point. I wanted to make a comment about the incredible place that we live because sometimes I think we take it for granted. We just had a presidential election that is strength to this nation, that we can have those kind of elections in a world where we have differencing of opinions and we still continue to lead. There's a lot of talk about what the new administration may do to health care, and I'm quite frankly not interested in hearing much of that, because what JPS is going to do, along with the other healthcare networks, is we will deal with what comes our way. It's interesting, we're being asked what's going to happen to the Affordable Health Care Act, and how's the Affordable Health Care Act going to change, and are they going to do away with everything or keep part of it or not? Those are the same people that are asking us the question, what in the world are you going to do with the Affordable Health Care Act when it gets here? So what we do is we adapt to what the administrative policies are coming down from Washington or coming down from our state. And we have a focus on our patient. I think the problem JPS would ever have is if it loses its focus to its patient. So what happens in Washington, we will help, we will give our voice, we will tell them what we think is best for the patients of Tarrant County. And I think a lot of people have been listening to that, both at the state level and at the federal level. I did have a wonderful conversation with Congresswoman Granger, who came to our event, and I think she's not only a huge supporter, we have a fine congressional delegation, and they listen to us. And so I think this presidential election is just strength in the type of America that we have and what we can put together. We also had officers, we had a slate of officers, a new officer slate for JPS. That transition is, as you know, a 2-year process for every one of our chairmen. Chairman Emerson has done a wonderful job of being a good chairman, led our organization in the right direction. He will now be replaced by Charlie Powell, and Charlie Powell will be the chair, and he will have as vice chair Dr. Chuck Weber. And Dr. Weber has just been such a great asset to us, being on our surgery team and now being part of our board. And then our secretary will be Mr. Wynn. DT Wynn. So we have a good slate of officers coming in. So not only at the national level will we deal with that in the positive aspects of everything that people have in policies, but our own board and our own officers that we will have. So I wanted to update you on our goals and let you know we'll be doing that. I appreciate your suggestion. I wanted to give you an update and also thank you for allowing us to come into your precincts and give presentations about JPS.
I understand that Ralph has also been appointed to the American, is it the hospital?
Yes, it's the American Board of Trustees, and he is now going to be a delegate to that, and he will serve on that. So he'll be on the National Association of American Hospitals, and that's a wonderful attribute to him. And it also speaks to giving a JPS a voice in that area as well, and that will help along with national policy.
Are those, how many people are from each state, or how do they work that?
They base it on state. I couldn't tell you the exact numbers, but it's the first time we've really had that kind of representation. So it'll be a wonderful attribute to us to have Pastor Emerson serving in that role.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Board members, we can move to item D. This is an update and a report on the joining forces, aligning community and military missions. This will be done by Mr. Kessler. He's with the Council of Governments.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. Well, it's always an honor to be here. As a proud Tarrant County resident. Appreciate all that you do for us. I'm going to give you just a very brief update on an important project that we're doing. In your packet, I've actually provided you, gals put it in a folder for me, this latest report by the Office of Economic Adjustment, and I have some if there's folks in the audience that are interested. So all you have to do is spend about 2 minutes looking at this data, and it tells the story of why we should definitely care about this subject. About a decade ago, actually, we first started, my first work with working with the Navy and NASJRB started with a joint land use study that we did in 2007 and 8. That was followed up by a project that was funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which we refer to as Planning for Livable Military Communities. And this same group of folks based in D.C. and on the West Coast, this Office of Economic Adjustment, approached us about, it's been 10 years, they know how fast our region is growing. Again, looking at NAS Joint Reserve Base Fort Worth, this is really all about compatibility and land use issues, and I'll go through that quickly. But they also said, you have a lot of military assets in North Texas. Rather than just look at one facility at a time, we'd ask that perhaps you look at a large-scale assessment, which we've agreed to do. Of course, the Regional Transportation Council, the Council of Governments, the MPO is very supportive of this initiative. And again, you look at these numbers, not only nationally, what the defense community means economically, but to Texas, and then once you get inside the state of Texas and we drill down to Tarrant County, you can see that we're pretty much a leader in defense spending, and obviously Lockheed Martin and NAS JRB are a big part of that. The last estimates we had just from those two facilities was a $6.7 billion annual economic benefit to the region. So there's a lot at stake, and that's the reason that we've really agreed to take this on. So this is one of the first true region-wide joint land use efforts that's being done. We're starting out in Mineral Wells with Fort Walters. That's still a fairly large facility. About 50,000 troops are trained there annually. It's conducted largely through the National Guard. They do a lot of things there with airdrops and Chinook helicopters and a lot of strategic training and a lot of training that we don't get to hear a lot about. But they build cities and blow them up and do all kinds of stuff in that part of the world. Then as we moved east, we get to NASJRB. Obviously, we have a lot of familiarity with the base, and we're really revisiting those issues that we identified in 2008. We've made a lot of progress on some. We haven't made enough progress on others. We're moving further east into West Dallas and Grand Prairie to what was formerly called the Dallas Naval Air Station. It's now Redmond Taylor Army National Guard Heliport. It is a very active Chinook military facility. They operate anywhere from 14 to 16 Chinook helicopters. They're at about $38 million a piece. Most of the time they're on deployment. They're getting ready to go again. So we don't see them a lot, but they do a lot of training there. And there's also a Republic of Singapore Chinook training facility in proximity to that. And that's a real challenge for us. NAS Dallas was closed in BRAC. Basically, that operation was moved to NAS Fort Worth. There were a lot of good reasons why NAS Dallas was closed. Encroachment, noise, neighborhoods. So quite frankly, we were pretty surprised to learn that there is much military activity still going on there as there is. And we're working with a whole new group of folks, the Texas National Guard, Army side, on looking at that facility and what its future may be at that location. And then the last is all the way out in Paris, Texas, which is Camp Maxey. It's another large facility. They primarily do ammunitions training and gun training. But again, about 40 to 50,000 troops use that facility annually. So each of these areas has some unique challenges, and they all have some common themes. We're in the first primary phase of this project. We are getting ready to publish a report that basically documents all the existing conditions at these bases and these facilities, and we're starting to lay out some of the challenges associated with those. And we'll spend the next couple months looking at some opportunities to move forward. Just to highlight some key points, I won't spend a lot of time on this. I think you all have a pretty good idea, but really it's a collaborative effort among local governments, military installations, citizens, and stakeholders. You're really focusing on encroachment issues. We want to make sure that these military facilities can continue to conduct their mission, but at the same time, the communities around these bases can grow and thrive economically, and the two can find ways to sort that out. There are a lot of joint land use studies going on throughout Texas. We're not the only metropolitan area in Texas that's obviously growing a lot. They just finished a large joint land use study in El Paso, and there's one right now also going on in Austin. But again, we're trying to focus on strategies to basically promote communication and education, And like anything else, we have really found that this is largely about building relationships. It's surprising how much communication is not generally happening between the military and the surrounding communities. It's not that they're not wanting to have it, they're just not a facilities or a way to make that happen. I'd stress this is an advisory document. It has no regulatory authority. It's going to be provided both to the military and the surrounding local governments. These are strategies that we're proposing that you put in place. And one thing we often get questions, well, is this a no-growth proposal? Absolutely not. It's really a pro-growth proposal, but how do we do it in a way that it's compatible? Some of the themes we've been out, we've had a whole series of stakeholder meetings. Our staff's been out for about 3 months, meeting with elected officials, military folks, neighborhoods. We've held a lot of public meetings. Some of the key things that we see over and over is that we have a remarkable strong support for the military mission in Texas in general, but particularly in North Texas. I don't think that would be surprising to any of you all. Really interesting thing that's happened in the last several months is that NASJRB is competing for the F-35 Reserve Joint Strike Fighter. Obviously, this would be huge. It's manufactured at Lockheed Martin. There will only be one of these Joint Strike Fighter reserve bases in the country. And when they came to do the assessment team, they asked for the reports on noise complaints. And all they had was, they had 13 noise complaints, and only 2 of them were actually related to NASJRB. They actually did not believe them. The team said, there is no way you are telling us the truth that a base this large in this large a metropolitan area and you've only had 2 noise complaints over the last year. Turns out the other 11 were related to the Chinook facility in Grand Prairie, but they didn't know who to call, so they called the base. But really remarkable. But we enjoy that now. We may not always have that luxury, and that's really what this is all about. Obviously, we know that we're growing. We're spending a lot of time in western Tarrant County. I can be glad to come back and tell you all the road projects we're working on. We're making a lot of progress around the base. That's a whole nother presentation, but we need to do everything we can do to support it. Redevelopment, revitalization, stormwater is an issue. It's going to continue to be an issue, particularly west and northwest Tarrant County continues to grow. We're going to pave more of the landscape. That's just going to create more water all running towards the Trinity system, which basically, the base is located right in the heart of that. And then I talked about the F-35. We had a really interesting presentation from Lockheed Martin at our coordination committee. They are really close to getting to full production. It's really interesting. It's a $100 million aircraft. They want to get to the point where they can produce 1 a day, which is really remarkable. You look at what that means in terms of the production. So the F-35 seems to be with us, and they have a lot of world partners now that are involved in that. Some stakeholder themes. We have made a lot of progress around NASJRB. We have what's called an RCC development tool. Whenever a city proposes a development in proximity to the base, there's a process that we ask them to put this into the internet. We have all the existing communities, and we have a committee, including the county, that's very active in it, the staff. We review those developments. We report back to the cities as to whether or not we think they're compatible. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they can be made more compatible, particularly with noise attenuation. But that process is actually very successful, and the Navy has flagged that, and DOD is really one of the keystone community involvement initiatives that's happening in Fort Worth that they're not seeing in a lot of other bases around the country. They repeatedly share examples with us that are bases that are having real challenges. Some are even being closed because of this relationship with the community that they don't share. We have had a very successful experience with the city of Fort Worth in their overlay zoning, particularly in what we call the Accident Protection Zone, the APZ, and the noise zones. We need more of that. Quite frankly, we'd like to engage White Settlement and Lake Worth in a similar concept. It's difficult. We're not sure how much progress we can make there, but certainly that's part of us. Some things coming out of this are some critical legislative initiatives that we are focused on. These are 2 of them. One of them is real estate disclosure. We had this before the legislature last session. I don't think there's a lot of opposition. It was generally died for lack of time. But what we want to have is that anybody buying a home or a business in proximity to an active military installation, we want a real estate disclosure statement made in that sales document in order that people will understand that there is going to be noise from the aircraft, there is going to be traffic from the operations. We think we can get support for that. The next one is, we're very focused, and I know, Judge, you've been focused with this, on the strategies related to energy infrastructure, wind farms, gas wells, also unmanned aerial systems. These all represent some serious problems for us, not only at NASJRB, but throughout the state. Right now, there's a very difficult situation occurring in Lockheed in Corpus Christi with a proposal for about 600 wind turbines in the Corpus Christi area that they think will absolutely affect military operations there, and so they have quite a challenge there. Other themes, we have it. I mentioned NAS Fort Worth, we have this communication. We don't have it in Grand Prairie and Dallas. In fact, it's the opposite. We're really struggling on how to get people to the table. We have certainly a lack of regulatory tools to address growth in rural areas, and that's really one of the other legislative themes that I know has been a point of contention with the legislature for years. But we're really going to, again, make a run at how do we give the counties more regulatory authority over land use, particularly in rural areas and in proximity to the military bases. Without that, quite frankly, we have some real challenges about what we can do. I was encouraged, Senator Cornyn has actually looking to introduce some national legislation that may give us some relief on this wind farm energy issue and the military bases, but actually I think it's all going to eventually come back home into, how do we actually deal with that issue. And of course, we're growing. I've shared with you before, Tarrant County will be larger than Dallas. Fort Worth will be larger than Dallas. And we're basically growing west. I won't go through all these. We've gone through a pretty extensive inventory of all the issues around NASJRB. Those that are highlighted are some of the ones that we're really spending a lot of time on. Obviously, development, infrastructure, airspace issues, traffic circulation. Those are all issues that we're very focused on and will continue to work on. Again, we've been through a lot of stakeholders. We've had lots of public meetings, and we'll continue to do so. We had to, I will say, we actually thought that when we got out to Paris and Mineral Wells that we would not get a big response. And it's actually been just completely the opposite. We ran out of chairs at both those public meetings over the number of people that are generally in support of what's happening at those bases, but really want to have a better understanding of what's going on. I think both communities also see this as an opportunity for economic development that, quite frankly, if they could get it organized, would be the case. So we've had a remarkable response in the rural areas to the project. Public meeting, especially around NASJRB, these are issues that would not necessarily be a surprise to you. They coincide with where we're spending a lot of our transportation resources. The Meandering Road Project has been funded by the Regional Transportation Council. We've done this development in cooperation with the county staff. The City of Fort Worth has agreed to take on the design, and that work's about ready to start. We're waiting on an agreement with TxDOT to be finalized. So we do have funding to improve Meandering Road. It was a road built, we think now, in the late 1940s. That desperately needs a reconstruction. And then there are some issues around the East Gate, appearance-wise, land use came up, fire suppression at Camp Carter, which is immediately adjacent to the base, could be an issue. So these are some of the issues that we're flagging on there. We asked the community, give us, at the public meetings, give us, show us on the map where you think there are areas of concern. Not surprising in River Oaks along the 183 Boulevard. I talked to just now about those access and traffic flow issues. And again, we're spending a lot of time. We've just finished a State Highway 183 corridor design feasibility study. We've handed that off to TxDOT. We hope they will begin an environmental preliminary engineering design study in the summer. We are quickly beginning a study of the remaining, and that was basically from 199 down to the Trinity. From the Trinity on down to I-30, we're going to work with Westworth Village and the City of Fort Worth and do sort of a quick 6-month assessment of that corridor. And then TxDOT has basically committed to do a full environmental impact design study on 183 from I-30 all the way up to 199. So we're optimistic that we're making some progress in that corridor. Some initial compatibility findings, again, infill and redevelopment, we have to stay focused on it. We know we'll have greater noise. It's inevitable. Places like Walsh Ranch are on the horizon. We know we have a job to do to really inform the residents of why we have military planes flying in the metropolitan area, what they mean to the country, what they mean to the region. That's largely about communication. Future aircraft at NASJRB, we know the F-35, they don't think it's necessarily louder. It has a different noise frequency that people are going to have to get used to listening to. And there'll hopefully be more of those flying. And as I said, we need to do more work in our accident potential zones in Lake Worth and White Settlement. Next steps, I just mentioned, we're anxious to get this out to the public, this release of existing conditions. We will look at all of the joint land use recommendations that were made for NASJRB, start looking at each one of those one by one. We got to get focused on this drainage issue. I'm trying to marshal some resources in the region to do that. This unmanned aircraft issue is still with us. We'd hope that FAA would help us. They did a little, not really what we needed. They have posted now regulations, and they're good. It's advanced it. But their regulations are largely focused on industry, and that's really not the folks that we're as concerned about. It's the hobbyists. It's the folks that see an airport or an airfield or airplanes and get the idea that this is a good place to fly their unmanned aircraft. I don't need to go through all those examples, but we continue to have some serious concerns about that. They've found some on the base, and of course, particularly in these single-engine jets, an F-16 could easily be taken down by an unmanned aircraft if it gets sucked into the wrong portal on the plane. So the military is very, very sensitive to this, as we are in the GA and commercial places as well. And we're out doing a lot of assessments of different strategies in each of these communities in what's going to be called a draft compatibility menu and following Pollock meetings. Amanda Wilson is our public involvement manager, but also taken over for this project, and I try to oversee a lot of this work. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Appreciate your time. We do have excellent participation from your staff. They're out of public meetings. They're giving us a lot of input. They're very active in our Regional Coordination Council, and I really do appreciate the time you provide Tarrant County staff to be involved.
Any questions? Y'all are doing a good job. When I'll be someplace and I hear the jets going over, everybody's just, that's okay. We just wait for it to get over, and then we'll continue our conversation. But
we call it the sound of freedom.
It's the sound of freedom. That's exactly right. And I think I hear that and I say that whenever I hear one of those jets go over. And I think it's catching on, and I think people really are beginning to understand that and think of that as a good phrase to use. And it creates a lot of positive as opposed to negative thoughts.
Did you see those dollar bills coming out the back?
That's what it's all about. It's freedom, and they're dropping those dollar bills all over Tarrant County.
I know.
Yeah, by the billions.
By the billions. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Appreciate your time.
Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
Okay, I'd like to ask that we close today. We lost a Tarrant County employee last week, Curtis Hilliard, and so I would like to ask that we close in memory of Curtis.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
With that, there being no further business, we will recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss business exempt under sections 551, 071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Code.
soon as I get 3, we're ready to go. Not yet, but they're coming up.
Yeah, he called us today.
What's that?
Jim called us today. He's like, what's the time? And we're like, already?
Wow.
I'm going to Judge
I told her she'd be back.
Of course, some of us are always last to know, but okay. You're not trying to convince us.
Having returned from our closed session, and there being no business to conduct at this time, we're